Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm Robert, and I'll be your guide on this meditation practice that enters a space of mindfulness through the act of drawing. The little sketch you saw there is from the warm-up we'll do to get into the exercise. A simple introduction to the reciprocity of projection and working between 2D and 3D. A way to design form, volume, and space from simple shapes, lines, and points. The translation mechanism, often used in my field of architecture or any other 3D design field, but can also be used just to craft little worlds on the paper to make something look like what we're used to seeing and explore it at a different size because it's here in front of us in a medium we can work with. The pen or the pencil. Anything you'd like to draw with will be fine. I'm going to use pen probably for the primary because it shows up nice. Make a mistake or anything here or there, right? You can just draw over it again, let the lines slowly fade together. You can use pencil, same things apply. You can always erase later. But as you work, you pay attention here. You don't shift focus to the eraser. Gets us off track, gets us out of mind, a different way of thinking, a worry about right or wrong. Instead, we're drawing through, trying to keep things proportional, keeping our angles all the same, lining things up and tracking them around, but we miss from time to time and we just move through it, move on, try again. If you don't have a lot of experience with 3D drawing, don't worry too much. Everything we do here is actually just 2D and drawing straight lines in different directions, but begins to look and represent something three-dimensional to us, so we'll track that with our eye, try to reconcile any oddities we see and build in layers of detail and dimension if we get there. Go ahead and gather your supplies, establish your space, and let's draw together. Today's exercise will be a little more of a kind of design exercise, but see if we can get our eye and hand to move some shapes around in space between 2D and 3D, but we'll just use a simple subject, a cube that we've probably all seen before. So as a warm-up, we'll look at the cube in two different ways. First, your version of a bit of a 3D cube. So things we've done before here, or just you may have drawn on a piece of paper in your life. That kind of corner view that looks like a box. The cubiness is not important. If it's perfect, just it's a box with the suggestion of 6 sides, the 3 in the back and the 3 in the front, that we can work with. But if we do think about that as also a series of 6 connected surfaces, we can smash it out flat, unroll it into a 2D pattern. And there's a bunch of ways to do this, so during the exercise you might play with those, but if we just take this kind of rotated 45-degree situation and draw several square surfaces next to each other, you'll get this kind of T or cross-like pattern. This is a very basic one, which if you were to fold this side up and this side up and this side up and this side over, would get you back to the box. And it's not bad sometimes to remind ourselves of which edge goes with which. We could do a little labeling system: A, B, E, C, C, D, T. And then the trickier ones, when this top comes all the way over, we have an E, F, F, and G, G. So we'll use that as a platform, and then we'll draw some simple patterns inside of this that might work their way around the cube surface, and then have to play the game of, if this is our E side, then E is over there. Somehow this meanders this way, and then thinking through, oh, if it folds, it's maybe over here. We'll use a little light meandering to get ourselves there on the outside. Do our best guess. It's always easy if you use a ruler or something. For this, we'll just approximate to get a flat pattern and see if we can't bring those dimensions back up to the full cube at some point. So mostly it'll be straight lines, little turns here and there. Anything you'd like to draw, you can open the cube up any way you want. Any six faces that just touch adjacent to at least one other face will work, as long as you label them and know which way they go. I think I'll start the exercise just by taking our time to enter the drawing space by forming that flattened, unrolled volume, the cube laid out as a series of squares, as our establishing mark, and gives us a little time to get into the drawing. Just simple shapes, rectangular, somewhere diagonal. The angle, not so important, but we'll use that angle as our guide for 2D and 3D. So moving the hand a little around the page, just noticing its boundaries and edges relative to your position. Feel comfortable with it, taking a breath or two in and out just to set the whole posture. To listen to the breath and the space around you, to settle in there. That time of attention and awareness to just this moment. To these actions that will unfold on the paper. And as you're ready, pick up the instrument, notice it for a moment in the hand, just finding the balance, the place you like to hold it. Drawing's, I guess, a little bit of a precise side of things, so somewhere where you have good control and feeling to the pen or pencil. Anything will work here. And somewhere on some kind of imagined diagonal of the paper, we'll start that first square. So maybe down towards the bottom left, or if you're left-handed, maybe the bottom right. Just take your time to draw that first edge of a square. Not too big, not too small. 1 or 2 inches across. And that sets up our first dimension. And again, the exactness of it being a cube is not so important, but we'll do our best to keep proportions kind of similar. And since this is flat, keeping our eye and attention on the angles, we'll try to make a nice right angle come off of that edge. And we'll keep those angles as close to 90 degrees as we can. It's part of the exercise, bringing a connection between the hand and the eye. And again, you can feel the dimension out, you can retrace a little bit to get a sense of the motion. Just use the eye to best kind of fit it in and roughly get a square on the page. And we'll build from this one, adding a little more depth to our attention. Once the space is established, we can let the drawing unfold so much as control where everything goes. From that ending line of the square, the cap becomes the starting line of the next one. We'll take our breath into account a little bit more at your pace, using the inhale to be ready to draw the next line and bring attention to the angle and distance. Using the exhale to form it out. If you go a little bit too far or not quite enough, we can always fill in the gaps as we work around. We'll use that rhythm of establishing through the intention and observation of the inhalation, and expressing through the exhalation. Taking a moment each time to calibrate to the new dimensions, breathing in again, filling out some space and exhaling the completion of a line and a shape of the paper. Take the next one at least at a shared, slower pace, getting into the drawing with the inhalation. And using the exhalation as a guide to mediate the motion of the hands to allow the eye to track the edges, to maintain the angle as close as we can. Breathing in when you're ready, filling out, and exhaling the next side. And bringing closure to the shape with the final inhalation to place the pen or pencil at the start and end of the line. And exhaling it through the shape. 3 in, 3 more to go in terms of forming the 6 sides of the box. And again, at this point, I'm going the line, make the T. You could play a little Tetris game, do an offset, anything that works for you if you want to explore. I think I'll just keep it simple, keep working in the same direction. As you know the pattern, you can move at the pace that guides you with the inhalation and the exhalation, breathing in before each mark to calibrate, breathing out to guide. Finding your breath's pace and rhythm that feels comfortable to this moment. It carries with it both action and relaxation. Listening to the sounds that unfold from that cycle of the breath. Listening if you can hear it, the sound or maybe the subtle sensation of the pen or pencil moving against the page. We know the pattern, adding 3 sides to the existing setup to make the 4-sided shape that we look at as a square. The angles close to 90 degrees, the edges close to the same length. Laying out that opened box, all sides folded down. When you complete it, maybe take a moment, try to visualize how it would fold back together. Take some time to go around and again, give a little label, number, letter to the edges that meet each other. Just working your way through the drawing, thinking about how each side relates to its clear adjacency, its nearby neighbor, and then its far and distant edges. And I drew too many, so we get 1 extra. That's okay. With all the edges labeled, change our scope and dimension to forming a box in roughly the same orientation. If you like some little guide, you could bring some lines over or just get it roughly in the same direction, that same diagonal to form the 2D turned on the page and the 3D set up somewhere. For instance, if I bring some lines over horizontal on my page from any one of the boxes, just letting them draw out, feeling that extension in a direction, parallel movement of the point through space. If I'm at 45 degrees, the back one will overlap, so we need to draw it again. We can consider that a way to move that same line here at an edge to somewhere else on the paper. Try to hit roughly the same angle by visual. Look and work a new rectangle, a new square there on the paper. Just moving it over along some tracks, like a little train car. But now we can change dimension and orientation. We've been working perpendicular and an X and Y. And we'll bring a little Z dimension to it as well. A line of roughly the same length. You can always use your finger or the edge of the pen or pencil to roughly visualize it. But usually you can eyeball it in. We're used to drawing it, and bring something down or up, vertical, in that change of orientation. Down or up each edge, extending to a new box. This one skewed a little bit, no longer a square, but a rhombus that looks to our eye like a square on the side. Think of that representation of a cube. Both boxes the same, both edges could be the same. You can find your edges choosing a top, left, front, right. If this is our top here, you can always write a little note about it. I might choose the central square as my top over here and write a little note. And knowing that those four edges are unlabeled here, we'll leave them. We have our D here, or C on the right side, A on the left. We would like some light dashed lines in the back to see the back side. Just some light lines to complete the whole box. We'd have our B. And we can find the others. For instance, the F edge becomes this top one. Oops, sorry, bottom one down here, folding the wrong way. The G becomes this bottom over there. The E back here in the back. And edges in the middle are left open unless you want to give them a label. But just to orient yourself in space, so there's an easy way to move the mind back and forth between the two conditions. And this part will open up a little bit, however you'd like to draw it. We'll just kind of make a map, a series of roads, a series of lines or shapes that work their way through the 2D pattern. You can start anywhere in there. I think I'll keep my lines kind of straight, just to keep it easy. They can cross between shapes. They can turn directions. The internal edges, easy to keep track of, where they meet one side or the other. And they can work their way to external edges. And we just have to keep track of A to A. And if you think of it like a little circle, the center point at the corner, you can loosely curve it around. Get that same distance, like a door. Swinging open, you can come back in to the other side. And the lines could just be lines. I think I'm going to give mine a little bit of thickness, just for fun. Something to play around with. Maybe they go in multiple directions. And just draw for a minute or so to fill out this thing, keeping track of which edges stuff moves along and around. Sometimes it may clump up at an edge. It may stop short. There's a dead end. Whatever it is that you imagine in playing through that flat land of the open cube. Then we'll come back to bringing a few of them to the 3D in a couple of minutes. You can always add more definition, more line and pattern. Explore more relationships through and across these edges. Maybe no fold back together into one shape. Trying to keep track of them. Maybe we miss a flip or a rotation somewhere, and that we can see and verify. For instance, this F getting its way over here, trying to keep in mind if it folds down or up, forward or back, which corner will meet which corner. It'll always be a little tricky, but we'll see where they go. And you can always come back and make adjustments whenever we need to. Just going over again each one to get a sense of its shape, its figure, bring its dimension out more robustly onto the page, and prepare my mind for translating these shapes to the 3D cube. And again, orientation helps. So on the top, we know we have this little offset intersection shape. We know it's roughly one distance or another from an edge. So we can mark out some points using the eyes as a best guide for a little bit off from center, not exactly in the middle of perfectly symmetrical, whatever you begin to find. Making note, observing one location, and translating it to another. There are plenty of mechanisms for exact copies. We're just using our eye to figure it out. And then, in my case, everything's the right angle. If you work with curves or something else, or oblique angles, you just connect the points, find the ones you need, redraw one top view to another top view. See how closely it matches. There'll be some slight inconsistencies, but it should look kind of the same. It's the same points, same lines, same rectangle or square, same orientation. And we can turn around the edges, knowing that this here becomes the right. If we want to remind ourselves, or the left or the front, noticing where points are there along the different edges. A couple on the bottom, a couple off to the side, about equal distance, using our spatial awareness to try to place them again, and then reorient now to a new system. This side turned down for me. Things work in the vertical and just one of the diagonals instead of both diagonals. So they get slightly shifted in their proportion. Now we're bringing points from the outside in, bringing points from the bottom up, and trying to roughly match what we see by staying parallel or aligned with edges, using the points in space to translate from one dimension to another, making something from 2D to 3D, folding it around into a volume. And since I just get primarily 3 faces visible, in the time we have, we can put them on the back as well, but with my left face, knowing that one line just goes down through, passes through that vertical. Another little line pops in around the middle of the edge, just for a moment. And one creeps its way up from the bottom, but not quite all the way. Now with cube, as you translate those, depending on the complexity of your drawing and what you brought to it, they now represent some kind of marks on the surface, and we could experiment and play and take those marks as volumes or as graphics, shading them in, I think will bring a little bit of depth to them, since everything here works in these three axes to form the representation of a three-dimensional object. And highlight some of the edges to see them as outer sides of volumes. And then we can use the same axes to bring a line in, corner that goes along the interior and disappears behind something else, maybe to later meet with another edge that we can't quite see. Start to use the structure of the cube to form out some other elements in space. Again, a larger object with more of the pattern translated over, we would know where things start and stop at every edge throughout the whole back. Right now, we just stop them when they hit one of their neighbors, so they start to create pathways, carvings, hallways, balconies, volumes emerging from the object. And if you have a pencil handy or use the pen, you can bring a little bit of shading to these to start to differentiate outside from inside, some shadows moving in along an axis, perhaps defining a direction, orientation to the shading to give a little bit of movement to the volume, horizontal or top based surfaces one direction, vertical back facing surfaces one direction, or a different tone or texture. Let's start to differentiate edges a little bit, help the eye see space from the planes of the geometry. And perhaps with a little time thinking about what this could be, something made of material, a little block, a little building, maybe something with pathways leading into it, continuing the language of the design from the cube out into the empty plains of what could be a landscape. And taking a minute or two as you work through that. You may go fast, you may go slow. You follow the dots, follow the axes, connect them along the faces. Eventually it will form. If one goes out of direction, out of axes, or out of plane, it may suddenly look quite funny, irregular to what we expect from the 3D. You may notice that. Draw a new line, reorient to the world coordinates. See if we can make it look normal to our eye. Maybe a little pencil shading or other things to change texture, tone. But the drawing takes shape coming from that understanding of geometry. Cube made of 6 sides, 6 squares connected at edges, unfolding it out, reconstructing it as a 2-dimensional series of relationships. Working in that simpler space, the flat, to make visual decisions, design, pattern, shape, texture of interest, and then translating to our mind and observation, points, coordinates in space, and directions back to a 3D that could resemble something. With the volume, there may be a sense of completion, making sure all the edges line up, all the dots connect, and take your time to connect them in the way that your eyes see it as having a bit of form to it. But when you're ready, when all the corners meet and things align to look like they take a shape we recognize in space, you can bring the pen or pencil to a rest, set it to the sides, let the eye take in the whole landscape, the thoughts that help move points around, the dimensions that jump between orientations and world systems, the light and dark that change your perception of shape and volume. Close the eyes for a moment with a few breaths, letting those elements sit in the mind. Notice if there's any visualization, or it may just slip away. With practice, with seeing these techniques many times, they may stay a little longer, give you a chance to unfold and refold, to move around and see through the volumes. And it's just building up enough muscle memory of the mind to think of that thing in multiple dimensions. But it always drifts out at some point. It takes a lot of conscious attention to keep it there, to build the world and work around it. It fluctuates like all thoughts, in and out. And we'll let it pass. Now from us, with a nice inhalation to fill out, and a heavy exhalation just to hear that whoosh of air, reset everything. Come back to ourselves, maybe a little stretch, and head off to the rest of the day. Beyond the exercise, we already have a form developed. We've brought our mindful attention into this space, worked the brain's coordinate system, our spatial thinking a bit, through some mechanisms of translation, taking the box, folding it flat, working through its territory, working around gaps and edges, and loosely translating our coordinates across vast gulfs of space, and bringing it back together, folding it back down, wrapping it around its facsimile of a cube, and giving form to those 2D shapes, carving them into the space, letting them carve out. And this can go on and on as we work through it. For instance, we might see, this is a little volume. For me, a little volume becomes an architectural volume. So perhaps it has a little parapet, a little edge that sinks in, same axes moving around. There, we could bring that pattern back to its space in the 2D map. Here, just seen as an offset of the edges, the difference between a surface and a little volume of space carved away. Similarly, you could bring some dimension to the edges, a little shading just to make it visible. It's like recess. Each one of these could have something like that. Maybe we see some opportunity in the 2D space. A little exaggeration of an edge, the wrap of a corner. This here, the face on the left over here, these elements can come back in. And maybe now they're lighter shapes on the surface. Little window strip. Or just a material articulation. We could even take something from the surface as they bring it out. Here we have a little awning come out from the surface. Maybe a little too small for our seeing in the drawing, but an idea recorded. As we give it a little different coating, we make it a bit heavier to know it's different. It can be explored further by blowing it up, drawing it again, layering paper over the top, and seeing something into it. We have an interesting connection here where one could pass through perhaps a little person or sense of scale to this. Or maybe this becomes a large window or canvas for something interesting. Throw a little curveball into things. That framed edge, but only partially revealed. Triangle to break up all the orthogonality. That same edge takes place here. Three points in space on a plane. And maybe it has a little depth, but we can see the surface inside of there. So we get our edges and some glass back in there. Make a little shade and a different tone to it to make it pop. And we can continue back and forth for consistency, perhaps to the top. But maybe this one has a little pipe coming up. And we bring it over to here, the pipe in from that corner around there somewhere. Down. The edge. Wrapping around. The parapet. Getting some shape. And some of the sides have vanished. We could draw the cue of it again from another side, flip our orientation and think about that and really bring it all together as one cohesive whole. But from this point of view, things are looking pretty complete. Add a little character, maybe a little mat out in the sun, maybe a couple of little shrubs wrapping around, hiding the connection to the ground. Maybe a nice tree here or there, somewhere on that plane of the landscape. Just to give it a little bit of character. A few squiggles the size of little people. A nice world beginning to take shape. But thank you for joining in this exercise of mindful drawing. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you found in your expression of 2D to 3D, of plane, line, surface, and volume. Share with your friends and subscribe for new episodes of Mindful Drawing, usually every Wednesday. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Draw well. Thank you.